The Apostle Paul said this, talking about his role as a leader, and to followers, he said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. In other words, we're not talking about, when it comes to leaders and followers, I mean, sometimes maybe people don't like those phrases. We're not saying you become a doormat if you're a follower, and we're not saying you become a dictator if you're a leader. We're saying let's have the same spirit that the Apostle Paul had. He said, imitate me, follow my example, but only as I follow Christ. In other words, don't pick up my bad habits, pick up my good habits. The way that I imitate Christ, you do the same. And listen, let me give you a little rabbit trail thought here, okay? When it comes to leaders, when it comes to followers, God calls all of us, we are ordinary people. There are no superstars. Jesus is the superstar. We are all just average Joes, average Janes. We are just living life. And God calls us to lead and or to follow. And so nobody's perfect. We just have to establish that from the beginning. There are no perfect leaders. There are no perfect churches. And in fact, one of our mentors used to say years ago, he said, yeah, if you're looking for the perfect church, just stop, because it doesn't exist. And in fact, if it did exist, as soon as you got there, you'd ruin it because we're all imperfect. There's just no perfect leaders. There's no perfect followers. And so, but what are we? We are anointed to do the thing God's called us to do. So somebody said it this way years ago, and I liked it. They said, leaders are anointed to lead. Pastors are anointed to be pastors. Bible teachers are anointed to be Bible teachers, and so on. But everybody has to live by faith. So in other words, you can sometimes see somebody who's a gifted teacher, preacher, you know, they're in ministry, your pastor, and you might think, man, they're amazing when they're behind the pulpit. But when they're out of the pulpit, they're just like a normal person. Yes, yes, they are. And they have a responsibility to be an example and to model and to imitate Christ and to be an example of that, just like we do as regular believers as well. But the point is, we're all human. And I think the quicker we take people off a pedestal without losing honor and without losing respect, and we'll get into that in some of these other lessons as well, but there's this place for honor and respect, but not idolizing, not putting people up on a pedestal that they're going to fall from. And the minute they do, as soon as you see their human side, that's where offense comes in. That's where people get like an attitude towards leadership. In fact, years ago, I felt like the Lord spoke this to our heart in a season to help coach our staff, actually. And it was that scripture in the Bible that talks about what you smite the shepherd and the sheep scatter. Well, that's speaking of Jesus, and that's a prophetic verse, but I felt there was an application in a season we were in that was like this, that the enemy comes along all the time. Listen, if you're in a church, this is the enemy's plan. He comes along all the time to smite the shepherd, to smite your pastor in your mind. Do you get that? To put something in your mind, an accusation, a suspicion, a bad attitude, some kind of, oh, they didn't look at me when we walked by in the hallway, they must hate me. Or they didn't respond to my email in 24 hours. They somehow must think they're too important. I mean, those kind of things the enemy uses. I mean, we've all been there. Come on, somebody out there. You've all been there. The enemy then puts a thought in your mind, well, my leader doesn't like me. They don't care about me. Maybe this isn't the church for me. They've gotten too big for their britches. I mean, on and on it goes. And what is that? I think it's the devil's plan to smite the shepherd in your thinking. Why? So that he can scatter the sheep, so that he can pull you away and isolate you and pull you away from the church that God has planted you in. So I hope you can hear that. I hope you can recognize those thoughts from the enemy when they come, and don't receive them. Walk in love, be a helper, have a loyal heart, imitate those you follow as they imitate Christ.